Welcome back to the deep dive. You ready to decode some Gen Z slang with me today?
Always up for a linguistic adventure. Let's dive in.
Okay, so our trusty guide, Gen Z slang, a guide to modern language, is going to be our roadmap today. And I got to say, just glancing through it, some of these terms are pretty wild.
It's a fascinating glimpse into how language evolves, especially with Gen Z's digital fluency.
Yeah, it's like they're inventing a whole new vocabulary. But hey, that's kind of cool, right?
Absolutely. It's a testament to their creativity and their ability to adapt language to their experiences.
All right, so let's start with a word I thought I knew, lit. Turns out it's way older than I realized.
Oh, definitely. Lit has been around for ages. In the 1920s, it meant being intoxicated, but Gen Z has repurposed it to describe anything awesome or exciting.
Talk about a word makeover. It just shows you how language is always in flux, reflecting the changing times.
Exactly. Language is a living, breathing thing, constantly evolving.
That's a great way to put it. So speaking of evolving language, what about sus? This one's all over the place these days.
Sus is interesting. It's short for suspicious, obviously, but it's taken on a whole new life thanks to the game Among Us.
Oh, totally. That game made everyone paranoid.
Right, and that paranoia has seeped into Gen Z's online interactions. Sus is now used to flag anything that seems fake, dishonest, or just plain off.
Like if someone's profile pic is too perfect, that's sus.
Exactly. It's this heightened awareness of deception, which makes sense considering how much of their lives are lived online.
Okay, but is that a good thing? Like, is all this suspicion making them more cynical?
It's a double-edged sword. On one hand, it promotes critical thinking. They're not just accepting everything at face value, they're questioning motives and looking for evidence.
So it's like they're training their BS detectors, which is super important in the age of fake news.
Exactly, but the downside is it could breed distrust and make it harder to form genuine connections.
That's a good point. Okay, next up, yet. Full disclosure, I still don't fully get this one.
Yet is a versatile word, that's for sure. It can be an exclamation of excitement, a verb describing a forceful throw, or even a dance move.
Yeah, I've seen those yeet dance videos. They're pretty intense.
It's a word that embraces absurdity and defies easy categorization, just like Gen Z humor itself.
So it's not just a word, it's like a whole vibe, right?
Exactly. It's a word that captures their energy, their humor, and their willingness to embrace the ridiculous.
I like that. It's like a linguistic embodiment of their spirit.
Okay, let's move on to simp. Now, this one can be a bit tricky.
Oh, I know. It gets thrown around a lot, often in a joking way. But it feels like there's something deeper going on there.
You're right. On the surface, it's used to describe someone who's overly attentive or desperate for romantic attention.
Like someone who's constantly showering their crush with gifts and compliments, even if they're not reciprocated.
Exactly. But underneath the humor, simp also reflects Gen Z's anxieties around dating and relationships in a world of social media and influencer culture.
So it's not just about making fun of someone, it's about acknowledging the pressures they face.
Exactly. They're navigating a whole new set of rules and expectations when it comes to romance. And simp is one way they're processing and expressing those complexities.
Wow, okay. That makes simp a lot more nuanced than I initially thought. So let's keep going, shall we? What's next on our slang decoding list?
Let's talk about ghosting, something I think we've all experienced at some point.
Oh, yeah, ghosting is definitely a modern dating phenomenon, but it goes beyond just dating, right?
Definitely. It's about avoiding confrontation, whether it's ending a relationship, dodging a responsibility, or just not responding to a text.
And technology makes it so easy to do, which is kind of scary.
It is scary, because while it might seem like a quick fix, ghosting can have serious consequences. It can create a culture of emotional avoidance, making it harder for Gen Z to develop healthy communication skills.
Right, like how do you learn to deal with conflict if you're constantly disappearing?
Exactly. It's a pattern that can lead to more anxiety and isolation down the line.
Okay, so ghosting, not cool. Got it. What's next?
Let's lighten the mood with chuji. It's a fun one.
Chuji. I love that word. It's like the ultimate Gen Z diss.
It is. It's their way of calling out anything they perceive as outdated, overdone, or just plain trying too hard.
Like if you see someone rocking a live, laugh, love sign in their living room, that's definitely chuji.
Totally. It's all about calling out what they see as inauthentic or out of touch.
So it's like their way of setting themselves apart from older generations, right?
It is about generational identity, but it's also about authenticity. Gen Z values genuine self-expression and rejects anything that feels forced or contrived.
That makes sense. Okay, so we've tackled lit, sus, yet, simp, ghosting, and chuji.
Hmm.
I'm ready for more. What else you got?
Let's talk about vibe check. This one's all about intuition and reading
Oh,
energy.
yeah, vibe check. It's like they're
Yeah.
constantly assessing the mood or atmosphere of a situation, right?
Exactly. They're highly attuned to subtle cues, both verbal and nonverbal, and they use those cues to make decisions and navigate social situations.
So it's like they're trusting their gut feelings.
In a way, yes. They're paying attention to vibes and using that information to guide their actions.
But doesn't that sometimes lead to misinterpretations?
Hmm.
Like, what if you're just having a bad day and someone does a vibe check and misreads your mood?
That's definitely a possibility. And that's why it's important to balance intuition with critical thinking and open communication.
So, like any tool, vibe check can be helpful, but it shouldn't be the only thing you rely on.
Exactly. Okay, ready for another one?
Hit me with it.
Let's talk about no cap.
Oh, no cap. I feel like that one's pretty straightforward, right? It just means no lie.
Exactly. It's a way of emphasizing the truthfulness of a statement. But it's also interesting to note that no cap originated in Black American vernacular English and hip hop culture.
So it's another example of slang traveling between communities and becoming part of the mainstream.
Precisely. And it highlights the dynamism and fluidity of language. It's constantly evolving, borrowing, and adapting to reflect the diversity of human experience.
Okay, that was deep. I love how even a seemingly simple term like no cap can have such a rich history. All right, what's next?
Let's talk about Riz. This one's relatively new, but it's gaining traction fast.
Riz. Okay, fill me in.
It's short for charisma, specifically in the context of romantic attraction. It's that special something that makes someone irresistible.
Oh, so it's like the it factor, that certain je ne sais quoi.
Exactly. It's about having that magnetic personality that draws people in. But, like any term related to attraction, it's important to be mindful of its potential to reinforce gender stereotypes.
Yeah, I can see how it could be interpreted in a way that puts pressure on people to conform to certain ideals.
Absolutely. It's crucial to be aware of those nuances and to promote healthy and respectful approaches to relationships.
Okay, noted. Riz, proceed with caution.
Uh,
What else is on our Gen Z slang adventure today?
Last but not least, let's talk about touchgrass, a phrase that's become a bit of a meme.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that one everywhere. It's basically a gentle, or sometimes not so gentle, reminder to get offline and connect with the real world, right?
Exactly. It's often used in a playful way to tell someone they're spending too much time online and need a dose of reality.
Like, dude, you've been arguing about conspiracy theories on Twitter for 3 hours straight. Go touch some grass.
Exactly. It's a humorous way of addressing a serious issue, our increasing reliance on technology and the potential for it to consume our lives.
It's like a digital detox reminder disguised as a meme.
And a very effective one at that.
So there you have it. From lit to touch grass, we've just scratched the surface of the fascinating world of Gen Z slang. It's clear that their language is way more than just trendy words. It's a window into their values, their anxieties, and their unique way of navigating the world.
And this is just the beginning. In part 2, we'll dive even deeper, exploring the cultural forces shaping this linguistic phenomenon and the insights it offers into the future of language itself. Stay tuned.
Back again for more Gen Z slang decoding. I gotta say, I'm already starting to see the world through a different lens after our last conversation.
I'm glad to hear that. It's amazing how much insight we can gain just by paying attention to how language is used. And speaking of language use, I think it's time we talk about the elephant in the room, social media.
Oh, yeah. Social media is like a breeding ground for new slang terms. It feels like a new word goes viral every other day. Like, how does that even happen?
Well, think about it. Social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter have created these incredibly interconnected spaces where information, including language, spreads at lightning speed. It's like a global language lab where millions of people are constantly experimenting and innovating.
Okay, so it's like a linguistic chain reaction.
Yeah.
One person uses the word, it gets picked up by others, and suddenly it's everywhere.
Exactly. And this rapid-fire evolution is fascinating because it challenges traditional notions of how language works. It's no longer just about dictionaries and grammar rules. It's about creativity, community, and the power of online trends.
But it can be a bit overwhelming, right? Like, how are we supposed to keep up with all these new terms? I don't want to be choosy, but I also don't want to be spending all my time trying to decode the latest slang.
I think it's important to find a balance. You don't need to be a walking dictionary of Gen Z slang, but being aware of some key terms and understanding the broader trends can help you connect with younger generations and avoid miscommunications.
That makes sense. It's about being respectful and showing that you're making an effort to understand their world, even if you don't always get it right. Speaking of getting it right, let's talk about humor. Because Gen Z slang is hilarious, like touch grass, that's comedy gold.
It is, and humor is such a crucial part of their linguistic style. It's not just about being funny, it's about connection, coping, and social commentary.
Yeah, it's like they're using humor to point out the absurdities of the world, to challenge norms, and to bond with each other.
Exactly. It's a powerful tool for subverting expectations, reclaiming power, and creating a sense of shared understanding. And it's often done with a wink and a nudge, acknowledging the irony and absurdity of it all.
So they're not just making jokes, they're using humor to make a statement. That's pretty cool. But beyond humor, what else can we learn about Gen Z from their slang? Like, what does it tell us about their values and worldview?
Well, one thing that stands out is their emphasis on authenticity. Terms like vibe check and no cap reflect a deep desire for genuine connection and a rejection of anything that feels fake or forced.
It's like they're calling BS on the curated perfection we often see on social media. They're looking for something real, something relatable.
And they're not afraid to prioritize mental well-being. Terms like touch grass and I'm baby highlight the importance of self-care, disconnecting from the digital world, and embracing vulnerability.
That's so refreshing. It's like they're giving us permission to be ourselves, flaws and all.
And to acknowledge our limits. It's okay to step away, recharge, and prioritize our mental health.
Okay, so we've talked about social media, humor, and values. But where do linguists fit into all of this? Like, how are they studying and analyzing Gen Z slang?
Linguists are having a field day with Gen Z slang. They're collecting data from social media, analyzing the evolution of words, and trying to understand the underlying patterns and mechanisms of language change in the digital age. It's like a whole new frontier of linguistic research.
So they're like digital anthropologists, right? Uncovering the hidden meanings and cultural nuances embedded in these seemingly simple words and phrases. That's pretty amazing. I'm starting to see slang in a whole new light.
And that's exactly the point. Language is constantly evolving, and Gen Z is at the forefront of this evolution. By studying their slang, we can gain insights not just into their culture, but into the future of language itself.
Okay, I'm officially hooked. So what do you think? Will these slang terms stick around, or will they fade away as quickly as they emerge? Like, will we still be saying yet and no cap in 10 years?
Yeah. It's hard to say for sure. Language is unpredictable. Some terms will undoubtedly become part of the mainstream, while others will fade into obscurity. But the process of language evolution is never ending.
So Gen Z will keep coming up with new words and phrases, and linguists will keep trying to decipher them. It's like a never-ending game of linguistic catch-up.
And it's a game that keeps language vibrant, dynamic, and constantly evolving. It's a reminder that language is a living, breathing thing, shaped by the creativity and ingenuity of its users.
Way said. And on that note, in part 3, we'll shift gears and talk about the practical implications of understanding Gen Z slang. Like, how can we use this knowledge to communicate more effectively, build stronger relationships, and maybe even avoid some awkward moments? Welcome back to the deep dive for our final descent into the depths of Gen Z slang. We've decoded the lingo, we've explored the trends, but now the question is like, what do we DO with all this knowledge?
Right. It's time to get practical. How can we actually use this understanding of Gen Z slang in our everyday lives? How can we bridge the generational gap and use this knowledge to, actually connect with younger people?
That's the million-dollar question. I mean, it's one thing to know what chuggy means, but it's another thing to, like, use it in a conversation without sounding totally cringe, right?
Yeah,
I don't want to be that out-of-touch adult trying too hard to be cool.
totally. And I think the key here is authenticity. We're not trying to become Gen Z, we're trying to understand them, right? So approach it with curiosity, with a genuine interest in learning about their world.
Okay, so it's about building bridges, not trying to blend in and be something we're not.
Exactly. Think of it like traveling to a new country. You might learn a few key phrases to help you get around, but you wouldn't expect to speak the language fluently overnight.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. So, like, don't try to force it. Just be open to learning and try to pick up a few things along the way.
Precisely. Observe how Gen Z uses slang in their natural habitat online, in their friend groups, and if you're ever unsure, don't be afraid to ask for clarification.
Oh, yeah, asking questions. That's always a good strategy. Shows you're engaged and willing to learn. But what about, like, the potential for miscommunication? Slang is so context dependent. How do we avoid accidentally saying the wrong thing?
That's a valid concern. It's important to be mindful of your audience and the setting. When in doubt, err on the side of caution. It's always better to ask than to make an assumption that could lead to an awkward moment.
Right, like maybe avoid dropping yeet in a board meeting unless you're really sure of your audience.
Probably a good rule of thumb.
Hmm.
But even if you do slip up, don't beat yourself up about it. Apologize, learn from the experience, and move on.
Okay, so we've covered connection, we've talked about avoiding miscommunication, but you also mentioned bridging generational divides. How does understanding Gen Z slang help us do that?
Well, language is a window into a culture's values, anxieties, and aspirations. By understanding Gen Z slang, we can gain insights into their worldview and maybe even challenge some of our own assumptions about younger generations.
It's like we're cracking a code, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly their words start to make more sense, and we realize that they're not so different from us after all. We all want to be understood, we all want to connect, we all have anxieties and hopes for the future.
Exactly. And recognizing that shared humanity is so important in breaking down stereotypes and fostering empathy. It's about building bridges instead of walls.
I love that. So it's not just about understanding individual words, it's about understanding a generation and finding common ground.
Precisely. It's about seeing the world through their eyes, even if it's a world vastly different from our own.
Wow, okay. You've officially convinced me that Gen Z slang is more than just a bunch of trendy words. It's a gateway to understanding a whole generation and building stronger connections. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what final words of wisdom would you offer our listeners who are eager to put this knowledge into practice?
Be curious, be respectful, and be willing to learn. Don't be afraid to engage with the younger generations, even if their language seems foreign at first. And remember, language is a bridge, not a barrier.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much for guiding us through this fascinating exploration of Gen Z slang. It's been an eye-opening experience, and I think we all learned a lot today. And to our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive as much as we did. Remember, language is a powerful tool, so use it wisely, use it creatively, and use it to connect with the world around you.